Welcome to System Login Access Manager training. This is just a general orientation session for those of you who serve in the System Login Access Manager role. We'll cover all of the different things that are sort of incorporated in that role and the different key points to how you can manage login accounts. So let's start by talking about what a System Login Access Manager is. A SLAM is a designated administrator who monitors and maintains staff login access accounts. And the main thing that means is that somebody in this role is in basically creates new accounts for new employees, ensures that those accounts remain up to date, and deactivates them as employees leave. An additional aspect of this role generally falls to SLAMs, and that is updating close dates for libraries. So we'll talk about that as well, especially after the recent closures that a lot of you experienced with the winter weather. So we will take a quick look at that near the end. Today, we're going to cover creating staff login accounts. We're going to cover maintaining accounts, the different tasks that are associated with keeping accounts up to date. We're going to talk about the different communications that you may receive from me as part of this role. We'll talk about the process of deactivating accounts, and then we'll look at the close dates editor. If you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to put them in chat, and I'd be happy to answer them. We're going to start by looking at the process of creating new staff login accounts. And in this part of the discussion, we're going to really be looking at the difference between a staff login account and a staff circulation account, and how you can tell the difference and which one to create and how. We're also going to talk a little bit about using generic accounts for staff login. We're going to talk about the standards for personal information in a staff login account. We're going to talk about permissions and what is entailed by the different permission levels available. And we're going to talk about the process of setting working locations. An Evergreen staff login account is used to log into Evergreen. Basically, it is what you use when you go to log into Evergreen, and it's what any staff who utilizes Evergreen uses to log into the staff side of it. This is just for logging in. It's just for that staff side access and then performing functions within the client. It is not for circulating materials. And I think for the most part, we're not really seeing that anymore. I think most staff have learned that the distinction between the different types of accounts, and we're seeing a lot less of circulation of materials on staff login accounts. If you have an internal need for materials, so for example, if you need to check out materials for a story time or a program, or you want to check out materials or place holds on materials to bring in for a display or a program, then there are circulator account or circulation accounts that you can set up to be internal that will allow you to do that. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the difference between a staff login account and a staff circulation account. A staff login account falls into one of these 6 profiles. The basic one is a circulator. Then from there you have a circulation lead, a branch administrator, and a system administrator. And then branching off of circulator is item cataloger and bibliographic cataloger. When you are creating staff login accounts, you will create it in one of the top 3 bullet points here. So you'll either be creating circulators, circulation leads, or branch administrators. If you do have a new employee who comes in and they're going to be doing cataloging, then you can go ahead and create a circulator account for them. And then once they've passed the cataloging assessments, I will upgrade that account to an item cataloger or a bibliographic cataloger, depending on which assessment they've passed. It is possible to give a staff member multiple different profiles. So for example, if you have somebody who will be functioning as a branch administrator, but they'll also be doing bibliographic cataloging, you will go ahead and create their account as a branch administrator. And then once they've passed their assessments, I will maintain that branch administrator as sort of a secondary profile on the account, and then add the bibliographic cataloger as their primary profile. And what that does is it allows them to have all of the permissions associated with a branch administrator, as well as all of the permissions associated with a bibliographic cataloger. So as a SLAM, just keep in mind that your role will be to provide one of these top three profile groups to any employee account that you create. So if you are even if you are creating an account that will become a cataloger, you do need to start them off as at least a circulator, and then from there we can add additional permissions as needed. Some accounts may be made as generic accounts. This is very common in libraries that have, say, a very busy circulation desk with a lot of staff that move in on and off of it throughout the day. A lot of times they'll have a generic account that everybody logs into. So the first person who should come on the desk in the morning will log into this account, and then that account will remain logged in throughout the day. So if your library has sort of like a just library circ login account, that's fine. You can continue to use that. Those accounts are only to be used though for circulators and circulation leads. So you can't have a generic cataloging account that all of the catalogers use, or a generic branch admin account that multiple different people working at a branch could log into. Instead, you do need to make sure that if there are cataloging or administrator permissions on an account, that it is tied to a specific individual. But for circulators and circulation leads, you can also have generic accounts. There's also an account type called volunteer. It's not very widely used, but if you have volunteers who come in, or even pages, or kind of part-time employees who really don't need to be doing a lot of functionality with patrons, they just need access to the back end of the catalog. You can create a volunteer account for them as well, and that can be a generic account too that can be shared amongst multiple volunteers. So that's an option too. It's very limited in the functionality that's available, but it allows those users to log in and, say, scan items and things like that. So it's very useful with shelving projects and things like that. One note about all of this is that staff circulation accounts are different than what we've just been talking about. We've been talking about staff login accounts. So when you're making an account for a new staff member, as I said, you need to make sure that you are applying circulator, circulation lead, or branch administrator profiles to it. Those are found when you go to the profile group drop-down menu under this heading of evergreen staff. You need to make sure that the profile you're applying says one of those roles specifically. The generic staff profile is not a login account. And I know that's confusing because of the terminology, but the staff login accounts will have a specific role associated with them. The thing that just says the generic staff is a circulation account. So earlier I said that if you have a need to circulate items internally, there's an account for that. This is that account. So you can create staff accounts that allow you to, say, have your youth services department have an account that they can check materials out for story time. You can also create staff circulation accounts for your staff members to borrow materials without having late fees, or with the ability to renew more often or something like that. You can set special permissions sort of as a perk for employees who work at the library, and you can apply this profile to their accounts to allow those circulation policies to take effect. If you are creating an account for a new staff member and you have placed a profile on it that just says staff, they will not be able to log in using that profile. And so it's really important when you're creating staff login accounts that you are actually designating the specific role for that staff member in the profile. Otherwise, they will not be able to access the staff client. And I know I've said that probably 3 times now, but it is something that because of the terminology is a little bit confusing. So I just want to make sure that it's that I'm stating it clearly If anybody has any questions or concerns about that, please go ahead and let me know. But we're going to go ahead and create an account. And in doing that, I'll kind of show you the difference live. So to create a new account, um, we just go into the staff client and under circulation, we register patron. So this is starts out the same as a patron registration. Instead of a barcode, we provide a username. And the standard for that is the first letter of the first name and then the last name. Um, Obviously, there are situations where that may not work because these usernames do have to be unique. So it's possible that specific combination may already be in use somewhere in the consortium. And if that's the case, then you can add a middle initial, or some libraries have added just a digit at the end. So like um, S Smith 2 or something like that. So let's go ahead and just create S Smith. I believe this is going to work. And then that's going to go in both the barcode and the username fields up here at the top. I'm going to leave the password here blank for now, or just with the generic one that's been put in, because this is going to, if I change it now and then I go and put in a phone number, it'll replace this with the phone number. So I'm going to wait and put in the password at the end. And at that time, we'll talk about password requirements for staff accounts. Now, we do have a couple of standard personal identifying information that needs to be included in staff accounts. The first one is that the middle name should reflect your library rather than the employee. So you really want to kind of have a standard across the board in your library, and different libraries have a different standard. It doesn't really matter what it is. We just ask that you remain consistent within your own library for it. A lot of times it'll just be the name of the library and the word staff. But whatever ends up working for you is fine. If you're not sure what your library is currently using, you can just take a look at your own account, and whatever you have listed as your middle name is probably your library's choice for that. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the employee's name. So her first name will be her actual first name. Her middle name will be, I'm going to put in library staff. Typically, you would put in your library's name here. And then her actual last name. And so that's all you need to worry about with the name section. Now, if this is a generic account, so for a circulation account that's going to be shared, you could give a username of, your branch name and circulation or circ, and then you could reflect that in the names here as well. The next piece of personal information to be aware of is that in staff accounts, we have a generic date of birth that's applied of January 1st, 1900. So this does a couple of things. First, it separates staff accounts out so that honestly, it's just a shortcut when we're trying to figure out what type of account something is in the database. It's really easy to see, oh, they've got a birth date of January 1st, 1900. It's probably a staff account, and go from there. It also ensures that they are not going to be, caught up in any, if we're doing any sort of data pull that's looking at birth dates or anything like that, this is going to be outside of a normal range for that. So we wouldn't accidentally get staff included in any kind of reporting like that. So it just sort of designates them off to the side as not a patron. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my January 1st, 1900 birth date here. Then down here in, all of this sort of identification information, you can leave blank. The next thing you need though is an email address, and this is required. And it's required partially simply because it is a required field when filling out the patron registration form. But it's also required because this is how password resets are sent, as well as the notifications that are coming out now about upcoming expirations, either of passwords or the account. These are emailed to the staff member. And so we need to make sure that there is an email address here and that it's accurate, so that staff member is getting those communications and is able to reset their password if they've forgotten it, or extend their expiration date if needed. So with the email address. If your staff do not all have email addresses, if your circulation staff or part-timers don't get an email address, you can put in a generic one for the library. Just be aware that if there's a password reset need in the future, that is the email address that that link will go to. Just make sure that the email address is accurate. Now, the phone number may or may not be required. Whether or not it's required is based on your library's settings. So if your library has a setting saying that that phone numbers are required, then this field's going to be yellow the way it is here, and you do have to fill it in. Because of some efforts that we have made to kind of make this information a little bit more uniform, um, phone numbers do have to be put in following this standard format. So it does need to be 10 digits and it needs to have hyphens. So if the staff member does not actually have a phone number, you can't just put an X or an NA here if your library requires a phone number. If this field is not turning up yellow when you're going to register your staff member, then you don't have to put anything here if you don't have a number. But if you do have a number, you do have, or if it is yellow, then you do have to put in a phone number. If the staff member does not have a direct line, you can just put in the library's phone number. The truth is we will very rarely use this. Typically, if we are reaching out to somebody, it's going to be a designated point of contact. So the designated cataloger or resource sharing contact. And we will go to the table in the knowledge books to get that contact information, not usually to their Evergreen account. So you don't have to worry too much about it. If it's just the regular library phone number, you don't have to worry that it's constantly going to be ringing with calls from Evergreen, or from NC Cardinal. But you do need to have something here, and it does need to be formatted correctly if your library requires it. If your library does not require it, you can leave it blank. One other note about this is you can't include extensions. So if your staff member does have a direct line and it has an extension, unfortunately, you won't be able to put that in. So, again, though, if we're reaching out to them, we're going to go based on data that's stored elsewhere. So you don't have to worry that that's going to make it hard for us to get to them if we do have to reach them. So this one does require a phone number. So I'm just going to put in a generic one, and that one's accepted. So I can move on. Now, this is where what we talked about earlier comes into play, the profile permission group. This is where you're setting essentially whether this is a staff login account or not. When you open this up, you'll see two kind of sections here. You'll see one for Evergreen staff, and under that are those specific roles we talked about: circulator and circulation lead, branch administrator, catalogers. And then you'll see another section here for patron. For non-system login access managers, people without system admin permissions, they don't see this top stuff. They only see patron and what comes underneath it. But you'll have this section up at the top for Evergreen staff. This is where you'll want to choose your profile. Now, if I did scroll down underneath the patron section, there is a staff option. As I said earlier, if you choose this and the profile just says staff, not a specific role, but just the generic designation of staff, it will not allow any logging in on this account. It doesn't matter what you set as the password, you won't be able to log in on it. So make sure that you are setting from up here under Evergreen staff and that you're choosing a specific role. So for this one, we're just going to go ahead and select circulator, and that's all we have to do. Now, there's one other part that does need to be filled in. That's the address. This does need to be your library's address, so it shouldn't be the patron's home or the staff member's home address. It should be the library's address. All right. And once you've done that, then you can save this. Oh, nope, we still have to do the passwords. I forgot about that part. We'll come back to this because I want to talk about passwords a little bit. All right. Um, let's talk a little bit more about those permission groups before we move away from this section. Before we do, are there any questions so far? All right, well, feel free to put in questions in chat if you do have any. Um, but I wanted to point out something with the permission groups, and that's that circulator permissions are the base level permission for all staff login accounts, unless you've given them volunteer permissions, which is kind of a different beast. Circulator permissions allow all of the sort of basic functionality within Evergreen, meaning staff who are logged in as a circulator can check things in and out. They can place holds. They can do some minor management of those holds, like suspending them for a patron and things like that. They can replace barcodes and other very basic level cataloging related things, but they can't make any changes to an actual catalog record. Circulation leads get everything that circulators get, plus the ability to do a little bit more with holds, to override some things, and to just have a little bit more functionality. From circulation lead, a branch administrator can do everything a circulator can do, everything a circulation lead can do, as well as go further with overriding things. So while a circulation lead can override some things that might block a hold or a checkout, sometimes you may need a branch administrator to come in for some of the more complicated things. A branch admin also can, I believe, set closing dates, but only for their branch, not for the full system. They can also bar patrons, but again, only for their local branch, not for the full system or outside of their system. And then, of course, the system administrator, which is what everybody in this orientation is can do all of this as well as maintain staff accounts, and then some other, a few other things that are a little bit more higher levels of permissions in terms of overriding and things like that. So circulator is the base level, and then everything else within this sort of circulation branch of the tree simply builds off of that. Going down in a different direction, you have item catalogers. Item catalogers can do everything a circulator can do, as well as make changes to item records, which means those locally owned holdings for the specific copies and call numbers at your library. On top of that, bibliographic catalogers can do everything a circulator can do, as well as everything an item cataloger can do, and make changes to bibliographic records. Bibliographic catalogers and item catalogers cannot, by default, do the things that a circulation lead or a branch admin can do. However, we do have a lot of people within the consortium that have cataloger permissions that need to be able to do some of these things. Oftentimes, in smaller libraries, the person who is doing all the branch administrative tasks is also the cataloger. So when that's the case, we can create secondary permission levels. And I mentioned that earlier. We'll go in and take a look at how that goes. Typically speaking, secondary permissions will be applied by NC Cardinal staff. So when somebody who is a circulation lead gets item cataloging permissions, I'll go in and do that secondary permission structure. But I'll show you what it looks like so that you can kind of get an idea of what's going on in those situations. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about that password part of the profile. So your passwords, obviously, when you come in to create an account, are going to put in just the generic patron password, which is 4 digits. That is not going to work for staff accounts, though. Staff accounts do have more complex password requirements. For circulators and circulation leads, if I click on this password hint thing, you'll get information about what this profile requires. So for circulators and circulation leads, you basically need at least 8 characters, and at least one needs to be uppercase, and one needs to be lowercase, and one needs to be a number. So it's fairly straightforward. It's pretty common set of requirements. So I'm going to go ahead and just put in a password that would fit those requirements. If this were an administrator account, so branch or system admin account, or a cataloging account, it would also need a special character as well. So if I was creating a cataloger's account, then I'd want to add an exclamation point or something like that. What I would recommend is that when you are setting up an account for somebody who will become a cataloger, even though you're not the one giving them those permissions, to go ahead and give them the more secure password to start with. And it looks like we do have a question in the chat. Um, yeah, Nicole, I can take a look at your account outside of this webinar and see why you're not able to log in and reset it for you. So if you want to just kind of hang out for a few minutes at the end of this, we can do that once the webinar is done and the recording has stopped. So if you are creating an account for somebody who will become a cataloger, go ahead and give them the higher level password. I don't think it would we'd have run into a problem when I went in to add the password or add the cataloger permissions. Where the problem would occur was when they needed to reset their password when it expired. And so it might be better to just give them that higher level password to begin with so that they don't run into any problems later on. So because we are going to turn this into a cataloging account later, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to put in an exclamation point. So this is almost ready to go. There is one more thing that you need to do when creating a staff account. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to open up an incognito window because I'm going to show you what will happen if somebody were to try to log in with this account that we've just created. Ophelia asked if somebody has both a primary and secondary permission level, if they're able to use the same password. Yes, it's the same account. It just has multiple permissions added to it. Permissions are, there are several hundred different permissions and they can be added one at a time. Profile groups allow you to basically choose which permission boxes to check through a single choice rather than checking a bunch of different boxes. And so when you do a secondary permission group, you're just checking a bunch more boxes in addition to the original set of boxes. So it's all the same account. It just has additional permissions added to that account. So yeah, the same password will work. The staff member will not have to toggle between them to use the different permissions. It's just everything is then on that account. So let's go ahead and try to log into Sarah Smith's account. It's 2 S's. And let's see what happens. No working locations have been set for this account, which means that this is all that Sarah can do if she tries to log in at this point. She won't be able to actually go and conduct any functions. If she tries to, it just pops her back to the login screen. So you as a SLAM have one more step that you need to do before she'll be able to use this account, and that's add those working locations. So to do that, first we need to go to Sarah's account that we've just created. So we'll go to search for patrons and we'll just put in the barcode field, her username. So that brings her up right here, and I'll open her account. And I need to go into the other menu. So I'm inside her staff login account. And it looks just like a patron account really, except that looking over here, her profile is set as a circulator. Underneath the other menu, I want to go to the user permission editor. So a moment ago, I said that Permissions are a bunch of boxes that are checked. This is where those boxes actually are. Adding the profiles means you don't have to go through and find all of these individual permissions and check them to give the person the permissions that they need. So the profiles make that process a lot easier. So you don't need to worry about that. What you do need to worry about is at the top of this screen where it says working location. This is basically where you say this patron or this staff member is able to work, where they're able to create a workstation. So, when you log in for the first time on a new computer, or if you're moving between stations, you'll have to set a working location in order to, or a workstation. In order to set a workstation, you have to have a working location, and you'll only be able to set workstations at the working locations you've been assigned to, which is why a staff member from Forsyth County can't go and create a workstation in Buncombe County and do a bunch of things to mess up their, their local um, records and things like that, because they're not able to sign in to a workstation at that working location. They can only sign into a workstation at a working location that's been assigned to them. At this point, Sarah does not have any working locations assigned to her at all, which is why she can't log in anywhere. So we need to assign at least one working location. When thinking about the working locations to assign to your staff, if you are in a multi-branch system, generally speaking, I would probably recommend that you assign working locations for every branch in your system, just in case you have somebody who they almost always work at branch A, but one time they go fill in for somebody who's sick at branch B, they need to be able to log in at branch B. And oftentimes, if they only have one working location set, people don't remember that aspect of it, and they get to branch B and they try to sign in and they can't. And it takes a little bit of back and forth to figure out why. So I would suggest generally to just put any working location that it is possible somebody may work at. Some of our very largest systems, especially those that are regional, obviously you may never have staff who are going between counties or something like that. So you can just assign the working locations specific to that staff member, but just sort of take a moment to think about where might this person need to sign in and assign that working location to them kind of preemptively. So in this particular case, Sarah works at PAC, which is a branch of Buncombe. So I'm going to start by scrolling down and finding PAC Memorial Library. And so I'll give her that one. And then I'm also going to give her just a few others within Buncombe. Let's start with South Asheville because that should be close by. Here we go, South Buncombe. And then while we're down at the end of the alphabet, let's look at West as well. West Asheville. And then I'm going to come up near the top and I'm going to give her East Asheville. There are several more that I could give her, but I think this is a good start. So, oh, that's Cumberland. There we go. So now she can log in at a workstation at any one of those branches. Obviously, she should only be logging in at the branch where she is actually physically located, but this allows her to move between branches if she needs to. Once I've completed that and I've given all of the different locations that this person may need, I scroll all the way to the bottom here and I click Save. And so now let's open Incognito again. And let's try having Sarah log in this time. So now, instead of getting that no workstations or no working locations assigned, now I'm being bumped to the workstation administration screen. So she can now choose one of the workstations that working location she's been assigned. So you see most of these are grayed out, but if I come here under Buncombe, then I can log into one of the ones that she's been assigned. Let's try South Asheville. And so I will put in a workstation name. This does not need to be assigned ahead of time. If you do have specific names for specific computers, I would recommend, having that labeled on the computer or giving it to the person before they get to this point. Um, but you don't have to, as a SLAM, you don't have to do this part. But she'll go ahead and register, and then she can go ahead and log in. And so now she's in Evergreen and she has access to the staff client. So that is the process of creating a new staff account from sort of start to finish. Are there any questions about that process? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things that you as a SLAM will need to do once accounts have been created in order to maintain them. Um, there's not really a lot of maintenance work that needs to be done for this, and a lot of it has been kind of taken out of your hands because you don't have to worry as much about the password resets anymore as you used to. So there's not a ton to be done here, but what you do need to do will be important when it needs to happen. Which is fairly rare, but when it needs to happen, you definitely need to be prepared to take care of it because people can get locked out. And Nicole, this is actually what we're about to talk about is probably one of the things going on with your account. So we'll talk about them now, kind of, and that'll give some insight into what could be causing you to be locked out. So oh, and actually Benjamin has just said that he went ahead and fixed your account for you. So thank you, Benjamin. I appreciate that. Um, so when maintaining accounts as a SLAM, there are a few specific things that you'll need to be prepared to do. The most common one probably involves passwords. Luckily, resetting passwords is now very, very simple. So I'll show you how to do that. There are two different parts to it. You don't necessarily have to do the first one, but there is a verification option. If somebody's like, I swear this is my password and I don't know why it's not working, you can basically use the verification password to see whether or not it really is before changing it. And then you can reset their password for them. The one that is less common, but arguably more important is the expiration dates. Basically, when a staff member's account has expired, and a staff member account is good for 3 years, so it takes a while to get to that point. But when they do expire, that expiration date, an expired account, they will not be able to log in. So it's really important to stay on top of that. And then occasionally you may need to make changes to permission levels. So let's talk about passwords first. Verifying passwords is fairly simple. There are a couple of different ways to do it. And I'll show you both where you can find both of them. And it basically just gives you the chance to have the staff member type their password in and it'll tell you whether or not it's correct. And if it's the password they think they've been trying to log in with and it turns out it's correct, then you can check for things like is caps lock on or something like that. Um, if their password is incorrect or it's expired, you can send a reset email. If you have generic accounts, so those generic circulation accounts we talked about, you as the SLAM can be the person who is in charge of maintaining those passwords. It may make more sense depending on your library structure to have, the head of the circulation department be in charge of that, or to have the branch administrator be in charge of that. But in smaller libraries, it may make sense to have the SLAM as the person who kind of maintains those. If you are the person in charge of those, it's just important to stay on top of them. They do expire every 90 days, so you want to make sure that you are changing them before people get locked out and then sharing those new passwords every time you do update them. So let's take a look at what to do if a staff member has forgotten their password. So let's say Sarah comes to you as the SLAM and says that they can't log in. You can start by verifying their password. You can do that two ways. So you can either be in their account and go to the other menu here, and there is an option here for test password. So you would come in here and you would just type in the password, or really have them type in the password that they believe is the correct password. If it is correct, then you'll get this little green alert saying that it was successful. If it's not correct, then you'll get a little red notification saying that it failed. So this just allows you to check whether or not um, the thing that they think they are typing in is actually their password. If it's not, then you can go ahead and help them reset it. If it is, then you may want to take a look at their computer and just make sure that there's nothing that could be happening with their keyboard, whether they've got caps lock or nums lock or something like that, that is stopping it from typing in correctly. So after you have verified that the password does need to be updated, you can do so here in the account underneath the Edit tab. And to do that, all you need to do is find this Send Password Reset link. So it's here next to where you would put in a password, and all you have to do is click that button, and it's going to send an email to Sarah's account. So earlier when I said it was really important that this email address is correct, that's why, because when you send that password reset link, excuse me, it's going to send an email to the staff member's email account, and then from there they'll be able to reset their password securely. We really recommend using this rather than resetting it yourself, because if you reset it, then you have to provide them with the password, and if you do that, um, whether it's on a post-it note or via email, it's not secure. So we really encourage you to use this as your method of resetting. You can do this for any staff account, which means that even if the staff member is a bibliographic cataloger, which means that normally you wouldn't be able to do any edits to their account, you can still send a password reset link and it will be effective. So that way you don't have to rely on somebody from the NC Cardinal team to do these resets. So if it happens at like 6 o'clock in the evening and you're still at the library and the staff member's still at the library, but the Cardinal team's gone home, you don't have to worry that they're going to be locked out of their account all night. You can go ahead and just reset that for them. All right, so Catherine is saying that she does not see that button when she looks at a staff account. I've not come across that issue before, so I'm not sure what could be causing it. What type of staff account is it? Hmm. Okay. I will dig into that and see if I can figure out what's going on with that. And I'll let you know. You haven't seen it for anybody. That's really odd. Give me just a Okay, yeah, Benjamin, if you wouldn't mind looking into that,
Okay.
and just let us know what you find, because I have not seen that when I've tested this. Okay, so if anybody else is attempting to do this and does not see this button, please let us know so that we can figure out what's going on with that. If I know that we've got a couple of libraries that have issues with the reset emails themselves not going through, that have to do with their local like firewalls. But outside of that, I have not seen other issues with this, so we will try to figure out what's going on there. Okay, so Nicole was able to do this, so that's good. It suggests it's not a widespread issue, at least. So we'll figure out what's happening there. All right, so thanks, I appreciate it. That is, um, I was not expecting that particular wrinkle. So password maintenance is fairly simple compared to where it was a year or two ago. If you do need to update a password on a generic account, you can do that just here in the password field within the edit tab of the account. Only do that for generic accounts. If it is tied to a specific individual, they need to be the ones to maintain their own passwords for security reasons. So only do that if it is a generic shared account. And when you do that, make sure that you're sharing it as securely as possible with the people that need it. Any questions about passwords? All right. Let's talk about the other major portion of maintenance, and that is extending expiration dates. So as I said, accounts last for 3 years, but at that 3-year mark, they will expire. I will send out notifications every quarter for any staff accounts that are set to expire in the next 3 months. Based on those notifications, you can go ahead and extend accounts for circulators and circulation leads so that they don't run into the potential that they will be locked out of their account. If accounts do expire, then the staff member will not be able to log in until that account has been extended. So for circulators and circ leads, the process of updating the expiration date is simply to go into the staff member's account, into the edit tab, and scroll down here to privilege expiration date and click update expire date. So currently she is actually set for, we just made her today, so her expiration date is 3 years from today. If it was not, and we clicked this, it would update it to be 3 years from the day that we click this button. So if you do have staff accounts that are set to expire, go ahead and do this ahead of time so that there's no loss in access. Catherine, it looks like in chat, Benjamin says that Llewellyn is going to figure out what or fix the issue with your password reset button. So thank you, I appreciate that. Once you have updated the expiration date, you can come up here and click save, and they will have no loss of access. You can also do it manually by clicking on this little calendar widget for the expiration date field, and then you can choose a date. I don't recommend that. Just, you know, they have 3 years, so if you just update it, then they're definitely going to get to that 3 years. So I would recommend just choosing the date. If you do have a situation where somebody is set to retire in 6 months, you can set it so that it'll expire the day after their retirement. That's fine. Feel free to do that. You can also do that even if they're not, even if you're not doing a regular update. If it's just this person's going to retire, so I'm going to go ahead and prepare ahead of time, you can go ahead and set them to expire when they retire. Those are circulators and circ leads. For catalogers of any level, item or bib, or branch administrators, only members of the NC Cardinal team can extend accounts. So if you do have somebody who is set to expire, please just submit a ticket and we'll take care of it. When I send out your quarterly communications, I'll let you know, if somebody is at a permission level that you can't extend, just respond to the email and ask me to extend them. And that's fine. You do have the option as well to extend expiration dates in batch. So if you have a large number of staff who are all set to expire, you can create a user bucket and you can extend their expiration dates all at once. This is very helpful for me when I have to do those cataloger extensions every quarter. This makes that process much faster. Basically, you'll just go into user buckets. You can create a bucket for expiring accounts. Once you create it once, you can use it every time. Just make sure that you're keeping it clear. So after you've extended people, go ahead and clear it out so you're not re-extending them constantly. Input the usernames for the patrons that need to be extended, and then add all of them to the bucket. Once they're in the bucket, you'll batch edit all users, and you will put in an expiration date that is 3 years from the day that you're doing this. Let's go ahead and take a look at that process. We won't do the whole thing. I'm not going to put people into the bucket, but I have a bucket ready to go. So I'm going to come up here to my circulation menu, and I'm going to go into user buckets, and I'm going to select my expirations bucket. So if I look at my expirations bucket, the privilege expiration date column over here to the right will tell me when people are set to expire. And I'll see that some people have already expired. I've got several of those, and some are set to expire over the next couple of months. So I do want to go ahead and just extend everyone in this bucket. If you do not see this column when you look at your bucket, you can add it here with the gear icon menu. Just find it in the list of potential columns and check it so that it's green and it'll show up. So I'm going to go ahead and select all, and I am going to batch edit all users. Now, when you make a batch edit, if you've never done this before, one thing to note is that you do need to name any edit set that you create, because you do have the ability to roll back something. So if you do something by accident, you can undo it. And in order to allow that functionality, you have to kind of save your edit sets. So I'm going to go ahead and name this one um, expirations February 2026. Now I could do a lot of things at once here. The only thing I'm going to do here is my privilege expiration date. I'm going to come here and I am going to change this to 2029, then choose February and February 10th. So I'll apply those changes. And now if I look in this privilege expiration date column, I can see that everybody's expiration date is set to February 10th, 2029. And that's it. If I go into one of these accounts and I take a look at their expiration date as it's listed individually, I can see that it has been extended. So if you do have several people that need to be extended at once, especially if you are a library that has migrated in the last few years and you're coming up on that 3-year anniversary, you may have quite a few staff who are set to expire. So this is a quick way to take care of all those expirations. Any questions about extending expiration dates? And again, you extend them for circulators and circulation leads. If the person who's expiring is a cataloger or a branch administrator, you can just submit a ticket and have somebody on the NC Cardinal team take care of those. And I do recommend a ticket rather than an email to an individual, just in case that person is not in the office on the day that you request the expiration extension. If you submit a ticket, it'll go to somebody who can do it right away. So you don't run the risk that somebody won't be able to get to it for a day or two. All right, we are not going to go into depth about cataloger permissions. Let's talk a little bit about those communications that I mentioned. So there are two different types of communications you'll get from me. Quarterly, I will send you a list of staff members who are set to expire. Twice a year, so every 6 months, I will also reach out to the point of contact for your library, which in about 87% of cases is going to be the SLAM. And that point of contact email will just be a list of who we have as contacts for your library, asking you to confirm that these are the correct people and that their contact information has not changed. So quarterly, you'll get a list of accounts that need to be extended, and you'll just respond to that email saying, I've extended the circulators and circulation leads. Can you extend these catalogers? Or the following people no longer work at the library. Now, if that's the case, there's deactivation involved, and we'll talk about that next. But the big thing that you do with that email is extend the people you can, request extensions for those you can't, or deactivate the people you can and request deactivation of those that you can't. For the points of contact email, you'll basically just get a list of these are the people we have listed as your cataloging points of contact. These are the people we have listed as your resource sharing points of contact. And these are the people we have listed as your system login access manager. Make sure that all those people still work at your library, fulfill those roles, and that their contact information is correct. If there are any changes you need to make, just respond to the email and we'll take care of those. Um, so let's talk about deactivation because that is the other option that can result from one of those emails is a deactivation. Now, deactivation also can happen outside of these emails, just if you have staff who quit or retire, are just no longer employed by the library. You can go ahead and deactivate their accounts if they are circulators or circulation leads. For accounts with higher permission levels, you'll have to request the deactivation through the NC Cardinal team. So deactivation is not the same as deletion. A deactivated account is still findable in Evergreen. And we do recommend deactivation first, even if the account is going to be deleted eventually. Um, Having a period where it's just deactivated before it's deleted can be useful because it may be related to various functions that have happened in Evergreen. And if we need to pull statistics for those functions or something like that, we want to make sure that that link is still there. Even once they're deleted, it's helpful to have them deactivated as well because deactivation and deletion are two different flags on the account. And when running reports of staff, if we forget to filter out um, deleted and we're just filtering for active accounts and somebody has deleted an account without deactivating it, then the list that comes up is very confusing. Um, the real takeaway from that is just when somebody leaves your library, please deactivate their account or request that it's deactivated. Deactivation basically involves changing the permission level to volunteer and deactivating the account, removing the active flag from the account. If the person whose account is being deactivated also ran reports and you would like to continue to get the results of those reports, you do have to clone them to a new owner. Typically speaking, when you need to do that, reach out. We'll set up an appointment with you and we'll walk you through the process because it's a little bit finicky. So we're happy to help you with that process, but just be aware that that does need to happen. So if your monthly circulation report comes from an account that's being deactivated, it'll keep running for a few months, but eventually it'll stop. And you want to make sure that you have transferred those reports prior to that point. And it's a lot easier to transfer them before the account's been deactivated. Um, so deactivation, I do recommend you change the password, although the rest of deactivation will make it so that the account is not really accessible anyway, but it doesn't hurt to change the password to just ensure security. You'll set the expiration date to the date of deactivation. You'll change the permission group to volunteer. You'll uncheck the active box and you'll click save. So let's go ahead and deactivate this account here. It's a circulation account. So the first thing we're going to do is take it from let's change the password. And then we're going to take it from a circulation account to a volunteer account. So I'm going to come down here to the permission group and I'm going to change it from circulation lead to volunteer. And I'm going to click secondary groups to make sure there are no additional permission groups added. There are not, so that's fine. Then I'm going to come to the expiration date and I'm going to click on the little calendar widget and I'm going to choose today. And so that's going to set the expiration date to today. And then I'm going to uncheck the active box. So Mary asked if the expiration date for deactivation should be the staff's last day of work or the day after that. I would not deactivate until the person has left for the day on their last day because they will not be able to access their account once it's been deactivated. So wait until they have actually left the premises, at which point you can go ahead and set the expiration date for the day that you're deactivating. So that'll mostly probably be the day after their last day. But if they're working till noon on their last day, it may be the same day. Um, So any other questions about that? We basically changed the password, we changed the profile to volunteer, we updated the expiration date to the date of activation or deactivation, and we unchecked the active box. Go ahead and save, and now this account is deactivated. We can tell that because it's got this kind of red flag up here at the top. And if this person were to try to log back in, they would not have access. Even if they happen to know what the new password was, they would not be able to log in. And they would not be able to make any get access to any patron information or make any kind of functions or anything like that. So it is now a secure account. Now, if this same person was rehired by the library, you could reactivate the account. So you could come down here, give them back the right permission level, um, update their expiration date, click active and save, and now it's an active account again. So, as long as you haven't deleted it, reactivation is always an option. Once it's deleted though, there's no coming back from that. All right, any questions? All right, so we are at 11:01. We have not talked about the close dates editor. I did leave that for last because it's a slightly different topic. Before we move into that, are there any final questions about account management, creation, deactivation, anything like that? All right. I know some people may need to leave, and that's fine. This part will be included in the recording, so if you do need to come back to watch it, you're welcome to. But if you're able to stick around, we're just going to take a quick look at the close dates editor. As I said at the beginning, this may not end up falling into your purview. It sort of depends on your library. Branch admins can set close dates for their branches. But you would need, I believe, to be a SLAM to set them for the whole system. Um, so oftentimes the SLAM ends up being the person in charge of this. Close dates editors, obviously, this is useful for setting holidays and things like that. It does not impact what your hours show as, like in the OPAC or anywhere like that. What it does is set due dates. Okay, and Llewellyn has confirmed that he has fixed the password reset link button for Forsyth, so that should be working now. Catherine, if you want to if you want to test it at some point, just let us know if you're still having trouble with it. But thank you for taking care of that so quickly, Llewellyn. So the close dates editor, the main thing that it does is that it sets dates that nothing is going to be due. So if you normally have a circulation period of 21 days and 21 days from the point of checkout turns out to be a holiday, it's automatically going to bump that due date to the next day that the library is open. You can set close dates ahead of time for holidays and things like that. You can also set emergency closures. And when you set an emergency closure, you actually will revert any existing due dates for that date and change them to the next day the library is open. So this allows you to not penalize your patrons if you have an emergency like a snow day or a hurricane or even an issue within the library itself where, if you have your air conditioning system has broken and so you're closing the library till it's fixed, or you have a water main burst or something like that, you can close the library without having to worry that your patrons will have all of their materials will go overdue. So there are a few different types of close dates. You can do a full day, and so this is just a single all-day closure. You can do a range of days, so this would be a multiple day closure. You can also do what's called a detailed closure. And so this allows you to close the library for only a few specific hours within a day. And then you can do, as I said, an emergency closure, which will retroactively change existing due dates and also hold shelf expiration. So if an item has been sitting on the hold shelf for 6 days and it should expire tomorrow, but then you have an emergency closure, that expiration date will be bumped so that the patrons still can come and pick up their item next time the library is open. Um, these emergency closures can be any length, so it could be just a few hours or it could be a full week, depending on what your needs are. There are a few things to be aware of within the close dates editor. Um, one of the things to know is that if you set an emergency closing and then delete that closing, the due dates will not revert. You won't automatically go back to the original due dates. Once they've been changed due to an emergency closing, they will remain changed. If setting a closing for all branches, you have two ways that you can do that. You can either set each branch independently, or you can start at the system level. But if you start at the system level, there is a box for apply to all of my libraries. You do need to check that box if setting a close date for your entire system. And I'll show you the difference when we actually look at it. If you do not check this box, the due dates won't change. And then also make sure that you process immediately. There's a box when you are setting your emergency closing to process immediately. If you do not check that box, then it won't process anything, meaning due dates won't change, and you cannot go back and process it later. So I'm not even sure why it's an additional option, but it is, and you have to check it. And if you don't check it, then you may as well just start over. That's really the only thing you can do. So let's go ahead and set some emergency closures so you can kind of see what that looks like. So I'm going to do that by coming into the administration menu and going to local administration. And we're going to go to the close dates editor here. And so at the top, I can scope to whichever level I need to. It's going to automatically scope to the branch where I am logged in. If I wanted to do my entire system, I could take it up to the system level. But like I said, I am going to have to do an extra little step to ensure that the changes actually apply to each branch. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to set close dates for all of Buncombe, and I'm going to do that by clicking Add Closing here. So I have scoped to my entire system. I could change this here if I wanted to. I'm going to keep it at the system level though. And then I need to apply to all of my libraries. And I'll do that by checking this box. If I don't check this box, then this close date editor is basically useless. It won't do anything. So I do need to check this box when setting at the system level. If I was at a branch level, I wouldn't need to. My closing type can be one full day. It could be a range of days, or it can just be a few hours. I'm going to do one full day. So I'm going to set it for tomorrow. And then the reason is really just what's going to be listed in my grid when I'm done. So you don't have to be too detailed with this, whatever works kind of for you locally. Now, because this is something that is happening tomorrow, so it's happening within the range that items may already have due dates for this close date. I'm going to call it an emergency closure. It doesn't have to be a true emergency. It can be planned. It can be 2 weeks out. But if you have things that may already have due dates on the day that you're closing, it's an emergency. Because what an emergency closure does is change the due dates. So if you have any situation where you may have items due at the point of this closure, treat it as an emergency closure, even if it's planned. So I'm going to click emergency, and I'm going to click process immediately. So as I said, if I don't process immediately, it doesn't matter that I've called it an emergency. It doesn't matter that I've applied it to all my libraries, the due dates won't change. So I want to make sure that my due dates change, and in order to do that, I need to process. Then I click OK, and it's going to process the emergency closing, and it keeps blinking like that because each time it blinks, it's doing a new branch. So that's sort of what we're seeing there. because I'm in next, I'm probably not actually going to change much of anything because um, we won't have any due dates for these days. But essentially, I would look over here and I would see in this emergency closing processing summary how many items, how many due dates were changed, and how many hold shelf expirations were changed would be listed here. I could then go into each of my branches and I could look at it at the branch level as well. So that's the process for the close dates editor. Um, it is not difficult, but it's very there are lots of little things that you have to do when you're when you're setting it up. So it's easy to miss a step. Um, if you do find that you've missed a step, if you're like you do all this and you see that no circulation dates have changed, and that's surprising to you, you can always start over. You can always just delete it. You just right click and then you can delete closing and then you can create a new one. But this is something to be aware of when we do have weather closures and things like that that cause us potential issues to due dates. But that is the close dates editor. Um, any questions about it? All right. Well, just a couple of key takeaways of what we covered here today. One of the things to remember as a SLAM, as somebody who's in charge of maintaining staff login accounts, is that all catalogers and admins must have a personal staff login account. Um, those accounts cannot circulate items. Working locations have to be set every time you create a new staff login account, or the staff will not be able to log into the account. Passwords. Passwords can be reset. We didn't really talk about the OPAC reset. It's not super necessary with the email option, but staff can reset their own passwords themselves. The big takeaway with that is that SLAMs should not be the ones resetting passwords for people, and deactivating accounts when staff leave. So I think as long as you kind of keep this stuff in mind and you are kind of on top of those expiration dates and deactivations, then the SLAM role really isn't too difficult. It's just a matter of kind of remembering, especially if you don't have a whole lot of staff turnover. You may have to remind yourself how to do this stuff each time, and that's fine. Feel free to reach out if you do have questions. If you're creating an account and you can't remember how, there are instructions in the knowledge book. I'm also happy to answer questions if you have them. But it helps us a lot if you can help us keep the staff lists clean and up to date, and it makes a really big difference. And it also helps your staff because they're never going to run into those situations where they can't log in. Any last questions? I appreciate everyone sticking around for that extra 10 minutes. The close dates editor is not officially part of the SLAM role, but it often falls to system admins to manage. And given the weather that we had recently, I felt like it was important to cover. So I do appreciate everybody giving me a few more minutes for that. If you do have questions afterwards, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions through email or tickets. Good luck. And I appreciate all that you do to help keep Evergreen clean.